Hello and welcome to our webinar. My name is Corinne Barker, SSATB's Senior Director of Professional Development, and I will be moderating today's session. I appreciate you joining us and to listen to the webinar, Hire Intelligence, How to Get Hired and Hire Great Talent. And I would like to extend a thank you to our presenters today from Carney, Sandoe Associates, Ben Bolte, Senior Search Consultant, and Jonathan Ball, Managing Associate and Director of Marketing. Because we have so many participants today, all the attendees will be muted throughout the webinar. But please use your text box marked questions on your GoToWebinar control panel to ask any questions you may have along the way. We'll inject questions to Ben and Jonathan along the way, and if you have any near the end, please add those in, and we will try to complete all the questions you may have before the hour is up. This webinar is being recorded and will be made available online at admission.org's webinar page in the Professional Development section. And now I'd like to welcome Ben, who will be starting the webinar. Please be patient while I give him control of the screen. All right, Ben, go ahead.
Great, thanks, Corinne. So, hi everybody, and welcome to our little session here. I know it's an extraordinarily busy time of year in the admissions world. Some of you may have sent letters out, some of you are about to, but I hope Jonathan and I both hope you do well in assembling the class of 2019 or whatever year it's for. We have a few things that we wanted to talk about today relative to the job search and the practice of hiring. We hope that some of what we say will help you do both things well when the time comes for each one. Jonathan, you want to add anything?
No, just welcome and certainly appreciate everybody's time here today and looking forward to getting into it and hearing some great questions from the audience.
Great. So we're, as Corinne said, we're happy to take questions along the way. That may be a little easier for us to manage. So we'll talk first of all about the preparation for a job search. You know, how you do a job search. It requires thinking through a few things and presenting yourself in the right way, of course. You know, job interviews are two-way streets. You're interviewing them, they're interviewing you, but the presentation that we have is going to look a little bit the same because this is really sort of two sides of the same coin. Some of the same issues come up on the job hire as come up on the job search. So we're going to get into job search considerations, and if you want us to pop back on a previous slide, we can do that. But in thinking about a job search, usually good to ask a few questions before you get started. You don't want to find yourself in a job interview or on the phone with the prospective employer unable to answer the question about what you're looking for or what your skills are or how you found your way into admissions work or why you want to take the next step. So just pose a few questions there that you might ask yourself at the beginning of a job search or even before you begin a job search. Why am I looking? What am I looking for? Do I have the qualifications that I think I need to move to the next step? What kind of position do I think I want to be in 10 years from now? I really like this question. I ask it during a lot of my interviews because it really helps to clarify what next job or kinds of jobs you would do next so that you are prepared to be in the kind of job you want to be in 10 years. Jonathan, you want to add anything?
Yeah, the other bullet point here that stands out to me is the one, do I have the qualifications to move to a new position? And obviously it's a very important question and certainly important to the new employer. But the potential employee and the job-seeking candidate there, I always recommend don't get too hung up on that, because part of a job search should be the fact that you are expanding your skill set, your toolbox, and you're going to push the current qualifications you have to the next level as well. So when looking at positions and thinking about making the next move, don't be too hard on yourself to ding yourself out and saying, oh, I don't have what's necessary for that role. I mean, you need to be within reason. Don't too far overshoot yourself. But again, most of the time, the point of a move is to push your qualifications to the next level. So, take some risks and take some shots that may be above what you think your current skill set is.
Yeah, I was sort of amused and impressed to read a quotation recently from a pretty notable female CEO, a Fortune 500 company, who said, if you want an exciting career, never take a job for which you're qualified. So that said, you have to be able to get hired into that job, and so we're going to talk a little bit about how to think that through. Very important thing. Jonathan and I are in the recruiting business, but I really want to point out that one of our mantras is, if you want to move forward professionally, do as much where you are as you possibly can. There are lots of times ways to grow within your own organization, within your school, within your office, by having frank and sort of aspirational kinds of conversations with the people whom you report to, finding mentors. There are lots of good ways to grow as a professional without doing a job search. I sort of advocate doing a job search only, not quite as a last resort, but really when you're really tapped out, or when you need to be repotted somewhere. Maybe those are archaic analogies, I don't know. Okay, let's talk about what kinds of experiences and skills and qualities people are seeking in admissions professionals. So we've listed a few personal and professional qualifications here. Here are the things I think you'll inevitably find in a job description, some more than others. Certainly in the last 5 to 10 years, some of these things like marketing, data analysis, and software systems have found their way onto the list, which for years and years has included things like public speaking, interviewing, financial aid, obviously international travel for those of you who are in boarding schools, and even to some extent in some day schools that have international student programs, residential programs, is much more of a factor. Strategic planning, if you read my article, my interview in a memorandum a couple of years ago, you would have picked up on one of my pet concepts, which really is that the admissions director needs to be needs to have a seat at the table, so that that person can be a part of the leadership team and be involved in the important strategic planning conversations that that occur from time to time in the school's development. So personal ones are probably no surprise. Many of you may feel you possess some or all of these qualities in different measure, but I think the kind of the 21st century ones are probably more like solution-oriented and resilient and team-oriented than some of the traditional ones, which are, of course, in admissions, personable, engaging, organized. Some of those things have been true about being a good admissions officer for decades, and I'm sure will remain true. So these are a lot of times the key things that we see, and so one of the things that you'll want to do when you imagine yourself in a new role or want to is to begin to inventory your skills, experiences, and qualities. What are the ones that you've developed? What are the qualities you possess that are related to admissions work. So have you and how much have you interviewed and marketed and run software systems and done public speaking and worked a desk, and some of that is ABC stuff. You're going to do it as soon as you hit day one in an admissions office, and some of it is experience that you will take on over your growth and development as an admissions professional. The personal qualities: are you team-oriented, proactive, insightful, solution-oriented, independent? Some of these, again, are time-tested, but it's really going to be important to talk about yourself in as many of these areas as possible. A lot of times in the job search, people talk about, does this person check all the boxes? And so, you're going to have to think of yourself in inventory yourself and see how many of those potential boxes you may check. It may require you to get a little more professional experience where you are. It may require you to do something outside of your current job that's going to help you get that experience. And as Jonathan, I think, correctly pointed out, just because you don't have the experience in certain ways doesn't mean you won't get hired, particularly if you have some of the personal qualities and other traits that are sought. Jonathan, you want to add anything?
Nothing too big there, but I also want to just highlight what I think is an obvious and growing trend in the marketplace, and of course is that travel and the international piece there, and certainly for the boarding school folks that are with us today. I mean, that is a huge skill set that in a global world, and really regardless of whatever economy is doing, better or worse at the given moment, is it's the new frontier for so many independent schools and so many levels. Obviously, in the admissions front, I'm seeing a lot of it in the development front as well. So, talk about kind of an emerging skill set. It really understanding kind of all the ins and outs of intelligent international recruiting and admissions work is going to be something that is going to be invaluable for a career kind of piece of your puzzle moving forward for it. I mean, I don't see that ever going away.
Right. Good. So once you've inventoried your skills, you have to really figure out how you're going to describe them. Jonathan's going to talk about how the show don't tell concept works, and I'm going to talk a little bit about value added. But I think these are two really important takeaways from our years of reading resumes and talking to people about how to present themselves. And I think, maybe it's less true in the admissions field because most admissions officers are used to doing some presentation of an idea or a place or a product. In the sense you're presenting your school to the public. So making the jump to presenting yourself as a candidate isn't quite as far a jump as it is for some other educators. But traditionally, people in independent schools are a little averse to promoting themselves, and yet, you have to be able to promote yourself in the right way, in the right with the right kind of set of experiences and data points, if you will, to ensure that somebody knows who you are, what you've done, what you're capable of. And Jonathan is going to talk a little bit about the wonderful adage of creative writing teachers, which is show, don't tell.
Sure, and so let's start. And I would imagine we have a wide range of folks on the call today or the webinar today. And so, just some of my immediate things about resume, just kind of general principles there. One, the good old traditional format of chronological order is great, and keep it, and don't stay away from the career summaries and blends and every other kind of trick in the book, because don't confuse your reader and don't confuse your potential employer. Everybody has very limited time in the world today, and so they want to have information in a clear, organized manner where their eye can go right down the left column of the page and the right column of the page and see everything they need to get off your resume. So I would say, stay away from new tricks and games and blends. It just doesn't work. And bullet point format is always best, and each bullet point and everything you write on your resume, you just need to take the time to do it well. And so bullet points, and each word in your bullet point is there with meaning and purpose and direction. If it doesn't make sense to you and it's not clear and it's not there with purpose and meaning, then remove it, because you're just wasting a reader's time. And remember, you also need to put yourself in the reader's shoes. Just because it makes sense to you, remember, we're all myopic people. Your office and the way it's run and your school community and the way it's run, it may make perfect sense to you, but it may not make sense to somebody outside your walls. I mean, Carney Sandoe has a great number of, we call each other PAs. Well, what's a PA? It's a placement associate. But if we didn't know that and write that, and I just put I'm a PA in my resume, I'd be speaking in internal language to an exterior audience. It doesn't work. So be very mindful of the word choices. So that's just some resume kind of just general good guidance and practice. And then as far as the concept of show, don't tell, is really you need to demonstrate what those kind of key adjectives in resumes are all about. So, people say, I have, outstanding leadership skills. Okay, well, how do you have outstanding leadership skills, as opposed to saying, you've mentored, ran, guided, and promoted, an office of 5 people or 7 people. Now you're telling the reader something that is concrete, that they can see, they can imagine, they understand, then they can, take it from there. So it's really not just using adjectives because adjectives are important in resume writing. It's really explaining what you've done that gets at those adjectives. So again, you're demonstrating the work that you've done and the successes that you've had, as opposed to just simply stating them. And that goes for it goes for everything. If you just go down the list of interviewing. So how many people do you interview on an annual basis? Do you do it internationally? How many international? How many domestic? Financial aid? What size of the budget? How many people are you administering to? What's the size, scope, and scale of that program? Marketing, great. Marketing, great word, right? Well, what does that mean? It means in this world it can mean it's 3 or 4 or 5 different platforms. Do you do social media? Can you do web design? Are you a PR person? You need to explain quite clearly what that means, as opposed to just stating you've done marketing. So again, just kind of a way to tease out all that real concrete, demonstrating the work you've done in a real tangible way to the employer, as opposed to being vague. Numbers, success, growth, movement, specifics. Obviously, when you go to data systems and software systems, be very specific about your ability to use that software. Great example, is Microsoft Word and Microsoft Excel. Everybody knows how to use Microsoft Word and Microsoft Excel, as in they know how to type on a computer. But Excel is actually a wonderfully complex and a very, very versatile program, and somebody can be a beginner at that or an absolute expert at that. And if you are, demonstrate that, show that, and clearly articulate your level of skill set in data and software systems. Again, more specific and demonstration of a skill set, as opposed to just stating a skill set.
And then a lot of you are probably wondering, how am I going to fit all that on one page, on a one-page resume? And I think the easy and correct answer to that is never do just a one-page resume. You really want, I wouldn't do a 10-page resume, but I think if you need 2 or 3 or 3.5 pages, depending on how long your career has been so far, take it. As Jonathan said, describing the work that you've done and articulating the the degree to which or the extent to which the programs exist and the numbers involved. It's important to include all that. I want to talk a little bit about value added as well, because one of the things that I've really stressed with candidates over the last dozen years now is really trying to demonstrate to some degree value added. What do I mean by that? Well, all of you are certainly familiar with the need to create strong re-enrollment incentives through broader distribution of a fixed financial aid budget. So the value add for somebody with financial aid experience or having directed a financial aid program was if your financial aid budget grew by 5%, but the number of families receiving financial aid grew by 20%, and your retention of those families was 99%. So, you know, that would suggest that the value add of your financial aid experience is quite high, that you were able to successfully broaden financial aid while the amount didn't grow, but you were able to help more families and lost barely a one. By the same token, you know, strategic planning. What's your, you know, if your section in admissions of the school's strategic plan had you meeting certain goals on a time frame that, and you met those goals, and you know they were broadening the admissions footprint in your the number of zip codes or whatever in your area, if it involved reaching into other sources, boys and girls clubs, youth athletics, arts and fine arts, you know, groups and clubs to find new families and children, and you were able to do that, then, you know, talk about it. The value add of strategic planning isn't by listing it as a bullet point. It's by demonstrating that not only did what you did, but what did it result in. So that broadened footprint in admissions resulted in an increase of 15% in applications and 5% in total enrollment. Or it involved, you know, broadening the socioeconomic diversity of your school because you were reaching out to families who, you know, were just had talented kids, but you know, were in a segment of the markets that you hadn't either thought of or covered or had time to deal with before. So again, the value add, the first piece is, you know, show what you've done. Don't talk about it specifically, and then really show the value that thing that you've done has added to the school. How have you moved the needle? Now, talking about personal qualities, you know, is a little more nuanced. How do I describe to somebody that I'm organized or that I'm proactive? Well, some of that is going to come out in, you know, your cover letter or your statement of purpose and practice, or personal statement, if you'd rather than on the resume. So you've got basically 4 parts to your credential file. Usually you've got a cover letter, a resume, a personal statement, and then a list of references. All of these, I mean, these 4 parts really work as a quartet to give you a chance to represent as many of your skills, experiences, and qualities as can be expressed. And sometimes the statement and or the cover letter is a better place to talk about it or to get into detail than on the resume. Sometimes it's the reverse. It would take too much verbiage to describe what you can do in bullet points on a resume. So they really complement each other, and I think if you, you know, if you again tell if you show on the resume, but then you describe in your personal statement, in your cover letter, what you've done and how you've done it, some of these personal qualities are going to come out. People will be able to tell from what you describe that you are involved in school life, that you are solution-oriented in your office, that you are trusted by your director of admission to be independent, and that you are relied on because you are resilient and proactive. So again, it's a little challenging to describe on a resume some of the personal qualities, but really that's going to come out in a good cover letter and a good personal statement. Let's talk about during the search, what kind of job search consideration should you be thinking about? You know, the job search is a process. Honestly, we've seen job searches that started on a Friday and ended on Monday. We've seen job searches that started in 1 year and ended 3 years later. You know, and everything in between. Some people are very open about what they want to do next, where, with whom, what kind of school. Some are very picky, but usually, you know, life happens, and you have things and strings that pull you in different directions. But I think it's really important to ask some of these questions as the search moves forward. You know, what you'll discover is that there are an abundance of really wonderful schools across America and internationally. You know, I've done searches in Poland, Peru, Shanghai, Taiwan, you know, amazing schools over there, as well as, you know, Albuquerque, Chicago, you know, Seattle, Louisville, and Fort Lauderdale. So important to think through, hey, you know, what kind of school and people do I want to work with next? You know, what are the things that are going to help me to pick? Because if you do, you know, if you do some of what we're describing here, you should have some good options to pick from when those options begin to pick you. It's also important to ask, you know, what am I willing to give up in order to get? You know, there's, in the same way that there's rarely the perfect candidate for a job, there's rarely the perfect job for the candidate. You know, either, you know, one of those variables is going to be off. You know, the salary, the location, the type of school, the size of the office, the, you know, financial aid budgets. You know, something's going to be different from what you'd really hope for. So what are you willing to give up in order to get a good job? And then Jonathan, I think, alluded to this earlier. You know, what if it's something I've never done before? You know, is it work I can really do? You know, do I have the confidence to go in and, you know, I'm not going to say fake it till I make it, but, you know, try to you know, move myself forward and take a risk and do something I'm either afraid of or uncomfortable with or unfamiliar with or all the above.
And I think along with that too, it's also finding the right place in the right institution that understands that that's work that you may not have done yet, but believes it's something you can do, and is in a position to support you professionally to be able to do that work in the future, whether it's through, you know, professional development or other aspects, or the program itself doesn't need it, you know, need an expert in it right away, but it's a skill set that you and the institution can gather over time together.
Right. You know, what are you going to say about yourself? You know, I mean, people talk about the elevator speech. I mean, you know, whatever you want to call it. You know, you got to have some. You have to have a story about who you are, what you're about, that you can articulate in a genuine and sort of contrite way, I guess. Who's going to help you in this process? I mean, look, job searches are they're a lot of work usually. Who's going to help you? I'm not talking about a firm like ours, but I'm talking about, the people who are going to be your references, the people who are going to be your sounding boards, the people who are going to support you when you didn't get that job that you really wanted. Think through, how you might organize this, not just with the people, but also, with your record keeping. I mean, listen, if you're doing a broad-based job search, it's like having a part-time job, and you got to have some kind of filing system or Evernote or, something to keep track of all the, the correspondence, your documents, the interviews you've had, your thank you notes you've written, the cover letters you've written, and, just to keep good records to make sure that you can do it, because it's a lot of work, but done well, and done thoroughly. Usually yields a positive result. So we're about halfway through. We're going to move over to the other side of this, which is hiring, but certainly want to take any questions right now about the job search, about thinking of yourself as a candidate in a search. And I would just add too that a really nice way to approach the job search is not by thinking about yourself in the job that you're in, but thinking about yourself in the job that you want to be in.
I do have a question for you.
For a second.
Yes, I have a question that just came in, and Jared is asking, can you provide a brief explanation of the difference between a personal statement and a cover letter?
Sure, Jonathan, you want to take that?
Sure. I mean, a personal statement is what I like to say is essentially the prose form of what potentially could be a lot of your bullet points, or some things, as Ben was suggesting before, that just simply wouldn't work as bullet points. Maybe some more of the your own personality traits that you can that can come out in a story form, and they may be some specifics and some accomplishments. But a personal statement is really about you as an individual, your philosophy, your mentality, how you work, and really who you are. And a cover letter is much more directed towards the institution and the opportunity. So you, as the candidate, have you're squared up in front of an opportunity at School X. You've read the job description at School X. You know exactly what they're looking for. You're then telling the employer what is of professional and personal interest to them about their institution and about the role that you're applying for. So the cover letter is to the institution and to the employer, and you're explaining to them, again, what is of interest about their school, why you're applying to the job, what skill sets you think you have to meet what they're looking for, and your personal statement is much more of a way to get at some of the personal attributes that you may have, and much more a story and a philosophy about your life. It's almost like your marketing pitch in general for yourself is the personal statement, and again, the cover letter is school and opportunity specific.
Right. Yeah, and we really advocate keeping personal statements from being too philosophical and really rather making them concrete and practical, because it's more about, how did you get into the profession? Why do you like the profession? Why are you a good match with the profession? What are the ways that you have made a difference in your current school? What are the ways that you engage with your community? What are the ways that you can show? Again, don't show, not tell, all of those things. And the cover letter, it's really about the job, and so it's really a little challenging to write a cover letter when you don't know the specifics of the job, because the cover letter is really about, the equal sign. It's about here's what I can bring potentially for you, given what you're looking for. And my only thing about my pet peeve about cover letters is, never say that you would be a great candidate for them, because only they know that. You don't know that.
The other pet peeve is don't have the same cover letter that you've obviously just changed the school's name, and everything else has stayed the same.
Yeah.
That's great.
Obviously, you can reuse some of it, but it's obvious when you're just changing out the name and you have one cover letter that you just, or that you're simply just changing the name of the institution.
That's right. And, a little empathy goes a long way. I mean, imagine yourself in the shoes of the hiring contact. What is that person really going to need to hear and to want to hear? I mean, they want to know that you've done your research, you've done your homework, you get what they're about, you know some of their issues, and you identify with them and embrace them. Let's move on to hiring
Ben,
well.
I just have a couple of quick ones.
Really
A couple of quick questions in addition to that,
of course,
if that's
yeah.
okay. Valerie asks
Sure.
about
Yeah.
the job posting. If they ask for a resume only, is it okay to send references and a personal statement?
It's okay, but again, empathy. Let's assume I'm a school in Philadelphia, and I'm posting a job nationally. I might get 200, emails. So do I want to create, I mean, you all know, having worked in an admissions office, you know more about document management than most people on the planet. So just send the resume,
Great.
I would agree. I mean, if they're asking for just a resume, the reference list is way too early in the game, and a cover letter, quite honestly, as a person who also, as directing the recruiting efforts of Carney Sandoe, is in a missions type role. If you just want the resume, you're going to get to the cover letter or ask for the cover letter secondarily. You're just simply not going to read hundreds of cover letters until you've gone over the resume.
Right.
She had actually referred to personal statement, but that could that be put into the resume so that's a part of that?
Again, I think if the hiring contact is interested, you'll know pretty quickly, and then you can send the rest of the materials.
Great. And then I have one more quick one. Someone is writing and saying they applied but online for a number of positions a couple of weeks ago and haven't heard yet. Should that person contact the school to inquire? Is that appropriate, and when is that appropriate?
Well, I think it depends a little bit on the contact person. I mean, look, if the job posting contact person was an admissions director, they got other fish to fry right now in February and early March, and you all know that. So the odds of their getting around to being real responsive for a job applicant instead of being, working on their admissions decisions is not real high. So, double back at some point. Sometimes the person is who's the contact point is just an administrative assistant or a secretary. They're probably not going to be able to tell you very much. If they listed that person as the job contact, then the person making the decision probably doesn't want to be contacted. So, I would say use your discretion. We have an expression around our office, which is common sense prevails. Again, imagine yourself in their shoes and, do what's appropriate. You have to be proactive, but you want to be sensitive.
And one more.
The only other comment there I'd say is that, and just on that line, I'd say if you are going to double back with a school, double back with purpose. I mean, let's face it, if you're out there and you're trolling the internet and you've applied online to 25 or 28 different jobs, chances are you don't really want all 25 jobs or 28 jobs. Go back to the 2 or 3 institutions that are really of keen interest, and you're there with purpose and you're really going after those opportunities, and then double back with the ones that really stand out to you as the job seeker. But if you're just out there peppering, your first pass is going to be as ineffectual as your second pass.
And I know this may be covered, and I just want to throw it out there, and you can perhaps get to it as you move along.
Yeah.
The question, they have an upcoming interview, and they're wondering what typical types of questions they should be prepared for that will most likely be asked of them. And I know that's a bit broad, but somehow maybe you could address that as you move on.
Right. Well, we're going to get into that momentarily, I think, at least from an example point of view. And I would say, in general, do your homework so that you can anticipate some of what what people are going to ask you. You know, if you're applying for an admissions job at a K through 8 school, you know, most of their admissions are you know, 3- and 4-year-olds, and so what you're going to probably be asked is, you know, tell me about your you know, your experience with toddlers and preschool kids, and so I think you can anticipate, if you really put your thinking cap on, some of that. But we're going to get into some of the kinds of questions that we would advise people doing the hiring to ask, and maybe that'll answer some of what she's asking.
And just one general comment there, and then we can move on in interest of time. But is that, you know, as a job seeker and going into an on-campus interview, the most important thing is that you're prepared for all the questions that would be obvious, because people are going to forgive you if, you know, you get run up against a hard question or a very specific, you know, sort of idiosyncratic question that throws you for a loop. But, you know, if they ask you a question about the institution in general, the mission of the school, the size of the school, the enrollment numbers, or, I mean, you name it, anything that's kind of a low-hanging fruit that was clear and obvious that you didn't do your research, that's on you. So really, as Ben said, you know, do your homework and make sure you're prepared for at least the basic broad-hanging, you know, institutional and job specific description stuff that you should walk in prepared for. And then, again, if you get hung up on something very specific and nuanced to the school or to the position in particular, the hiring administrator is going to help you through that anyway. But don't get caught short, basically.
All right, so we'll keep questions coming. That's fine, but we have about 20 more minutes to move into hiring well. You know, we really think that it requires a few things: marketplace understanding, instincts, good questions. Now, this is not just directed at folks in you know, in admissions or in higher level administration. I mean, the notion that your leadership really depends on those you hire, your success really is in part comes from their success. So remember that, you know, even if you're a 24-year-old assistant director of admissions somewhere, you still can play a critical role in the hiring of people on your team. So I think, you know, whether you want to call it managing from the middle or you know, having all hands on deck, really hiring is everybody. Good hiring, you know, is everybody's responsibility, because, you know, you are going to be colleagues with, obviously, with whomever you hire in your office. So hiring well is critical, not just for the leader of that office, but also for those who work there. And so, you know, be proactive about that. It's going to require some marketplace understanding. You know, Jonathan, you want to talk a little bit about the broader market and what to be aware of?
Well, I mean, it's really important, and I used the word before, it's kind of myopic, and it's really important to remember, and not to get into or, you know, kind of toot Carney Sandoe's horn, but, you know, having, you know, making sure that you're not thinking myopically about your institution or your opportunity, making sure you understand that you're hiring in a, you know, a broader context of an independent school marketplace. So doing your research and doing your data checking, doing your fact finding about really just, you know, essentially, I guess the last bullet point there is, how does my opportunity play out in the broader market space? That's going to be a really important place to start, because it's going to appropriately align your needs with your expectations, and what the outcome comes, it's going to be able to help you determine what the right candidate is at the right time. You know, there's a lot of times institutions can be looking for X, Y, and Z, but only really need X, Y, and can sometimes only pay for X. And so making sure you understand how your position lines up in the greater context of the marketplace and your ability to recruit the talent. So really, you know, kind of taking off that myopic lens and looking across the marketplace generally is the point here, and there's some other bullet points that Ben can address.
Well, you know, you want to be able to attract the right person. You want to be able to figure out what you need. You know, if you're in a multi-person office, You may need somebody whose skills complement other people on your staff. If you're in a two-person office, you're going to have somebody who can. We want to avoid multitask because we've all the articles that we've read in the last 5 years tell us that we're less productive when we multitask. But you want to have somebody with a good toolbox who can really do a lot of different kinds of things. We know that good hiring is instinctual. In the end, it's sort of an intellectual exercise at the beginning, and it becomes sort of an instinctual, emotional exercise at the end. You have to do your due diligence at the beginning. You have to figure out, who you want in terms of skills and experiences and qualities, and you have to study people well. When they come onto your radar in various points of the interview process. From the first email or phone call to the final, negotiation potentially. You've got to really use your gut to determine as much as your mind did. You've got to match up the skills of what you're looking for with the skills and the experiences that person brings. But then, you really got to let your heart take over and decide, this is the person I want to work with, and they're going to be making the same decision, by the way. Most people who take a job are answering 3 questions: is this where I want to work? Is this work I want to do? And is this somebody I want to do the work with? So, you hope at the end, the answer to those questions is yes for the person that you want to hire. But you got to figure out who works well, with your school, with the culture of your school. What kind of qualities do they have, and what am I willing to let go of? We've seen some wonderful people get hired who didn't match what what the school said at the beginning of the search that they wanted, but it turns out to be a terrific hire, and not always, but usually. And if you trust how the interview felt and what your gut's telling you, that's important. So what are you seeking? Some of the same things again that we were talking about earlier about skills inventory, experience inventory. Traditionally, you gotta have people who must be organized, professional, tactful, and so on, proactive. This is what I love about the admissions profession, because people are this way. It's such a tremendous subset of independent school educators, I think, because there's a lot of engaged, optimistic, joyful, and proactive people in the profession. That's really great. But the things that a person must do to get hired, they don't always have the shoulds. Yeah, they should be a good public speaker, and they should be good with data, but you're going to build a team here, and you don't have to have everybody on your staff good with data. You don't have to have everybody on your staff who's tech savvy. So figure out what your musts and shoulds. This is just an example. It may be that a good public speaker is a lot better than being personable. I don't know. You'll have to decide. But there's no perfect candidate for every job. We do a lot of head searches around here, and schools are always looking for Jesus on a good day. They have a Christmas list, that's 250 qualities and qualifications long, and it's just not going to happen. So you got to decide what your musts and shoulds are. Jonathan, anything you want to mention on that?
No, I think that's pretty spot on.
So let's talk about how you're going to find out, like in your questions on phone calls and Skype interviews and in-person, face-to-face interviews. What kinds of things are you going to ask to interview people? You're not going to ask yes or no questions, by the way. No question that can be answered that way is worth anything. You take the job. So compose questions that are going to allow the candidate, and this is a lot like admissions work, right? You want the kid in admissions to be able to reveal who they are to you, and so you gotta be a little bit of an English major in a sense, or a historian, to figure out, what are the questions they're going to ask in order to get at the truth about this person, that are going to reveal, their personal and professional growth, and talk about how they respond to setback and disappointment, and how they work in a group setting, and how they work with their boss and their colleagues, and situational, experiential questions. Maybe Jonathan, you explain a little bit what we mean by that.
Well, it's questions. I mean, exactly the way it is. It's where you get them to talk about how they acted in a particular environment or a particular situation. That's going to reveal how they act as a professional, and really get them to open up about some of those bullet points that they've talked about. But you're going to see it in a real life experience, whatever it is. How did they handle X situation with a family, or how did they explain Y to another family, and really just giving them opportunities to really expand upon some of the professional experiences they've had in what would be real life situations or experiences that they've encountered professionally.
Right. So speaking of real-life situations, I took a job description that we received in the office yesterday from a school down in the Mid-Atlantic, and they've got a job open, and so I kind of grayed out all of the usual stuff and highlighted in red for you, the things that the school is asking for that are really either qualifications, or rather skills or abilities, or their personal qualities. And so that's a pretty long list, actually. And we're not going to talk about each one of those for lack of time, but you can see that you can see the usual suspects there. And so we've taken some of these concepts like collaboration and executing a vision, and developing and maintaining a relationship, and being organized, and just offered a couple of ways of asking to get at those things. So, I mean, a couple of things you could say relative to an interviewee about how are they collaborative. Describe the role you play in a group setting. What kind of role do they take in a group? That's going to, they're describing that. It's going to give you not 100% of the picture, but it's going to begin to clue you into whether they're a collaborative worker or not. What happens when you strongly disagree, with a colleague or with your boss? That's going to tell you a little bit about how collaborative they are. Do they have to go take a walk, or, can they go back to their desk and, execute what they disagreed about? What about the ability to develop and execute a vision? How do you get at something like that? Well, one way would be to ask them to describe something they worked on for a long period of time. It might have been their thesis, their senior year of college, or it might have been, the summer that they built a house in Guatemala, or some kind of thing that took a lot of planning and sustained effort. That's going to help you understand whether somebody's got the foresight and the stick-to-itiveness and sort of discipline to really develop and execute, whether they can stay focused on the goal or whether they just want to, they'd rather go surfing. What about maintaining and developing relationships? Again, this comes right out of the job description there, the job posting. What are some of the things that you think people remember about you after they meet you? I mean, you talk about that for 5 or 10 minutes, and that's going to really, I think, to help you understand who you're speaking with a little more deeply, and how they see themselves. Now, maybe they don't see themselves in a real way. I don't know, but you know, you'll be able to pick up on some of that. And then, you know, how do you know if somebody's organized? I mean, they say they're organized, but, you know, ask them to talk about how they organize their work and how they plan things and manage emergencies and handle interruptions and meet deadlines. I mean, you know, an interview is not an interrogation, it's a conversation. And, you know, you really have to have that with people. And the best interviewers can usually tell a lot in a shorter amount of time than most people. And so I love E.H. Carr, an English historian, who said, you know, all history is written by those who ask the right questions. And I think, you know, the best hiring is often done by people who ask the right questions, because, you know, it really helps you to get at the truth of people and who they are and what their motives are and that sort of thing. Jonathan, you want to add anything?
No, I mean, I think, again, in the interest of time, that was very well said, and being, you know, having a list of good developed questions is going to go a long way in hiring the right candidate.
So let's talk a little bit about guidelines in hiring. When I say let's talk, I'm sorry, because I'm the only one talking for the most part. But, you know, remember, you're building a team. Don't hire the same kinds of people. You know, you need an office where, you know, somebody, maybe, you know, at least one person's got a great sense of humor. You need, you know, different kinds of skills. You don't need everybody to have the same skill necessarily. Some need to have some of the same skills, but, you know, not everybody. John, what about that second one, the timeline?
Yeah, no, I've got. I mean, there's no timeline when you find the right person. That's absolutely right. I mean, you don't get caught up in analysis paralysis of, you know, you have to have a process and you have to go through X, Y, and Z, or you have an open date to apply until this day, and you're accepting applications until then. You know, if you find the right person, you find the right talent, you put them through, you know, what you think is a good internal hiring process, your team's all on board, your community's on board, pull the trigger and make it happen. Because if that person is that good to you, I guarantee they are to somebody else. And keep them warm and excited and happy. Keep that kind of, you know, honeymoon going with them. And don't be afraid to act on a great candidate. You're not going to be sorry that you did, as long as, again, as you've gone through everything that we've just talked about. But, you know, at the end of the day, you don't need to see 25 people or 5 people or bring 3 finalists in to arrive at the one. You can have 1 finalist and be perfectly fine with that if it's the right finalist. You only have 1 job to hire for, remember? Yeah.
And you got to figure out, you know, are they good at doing it? Because some people are better at getting it, at doing it. You got to figure out who those are. By hiring underneath the job, you know, we certainly mean that sometimes you can hire somebody who's not quite ready for the job, but they can grow into it. You have to be able to, you know, kind of discern that, but it's okay to do. You know, if you can ramp them up in a short amount of time, and don't make assumptions for the candidate. You know, don't assume that, oh, she won't want to live here, he won't want to make that much. You know, I'm not sure what spouse is going to do. You know, the job search, you know, you want to end up having, you know, sort of forthright and straightforward conversations with the candidate, and that's going to bode well for you anyway if you hire them. So make sure you start with a clear understanding of what you're looking for. Present your opportunity, you know, in a compelling, professional way. Some of you, you know, are going to have to work harder at presenting the opportunity than others because of where you're located, or, you know, how much money you can pay or whatever. But listen, people are excited about those that they work with and about the vision that those people have. And I think people follow vision before most anything. And so if it's realistic and compelling, that'll go a long way to making your hiring good. We'll take a couple, any questions right now in the 1 minute remaining, I guess.
We don't have any new ones. I think people were anxious to get them in early and had some good ones early on. And unless someone types them in while I'm finishing out here, I especially want to thank Ben and Jonathan for some very insightful tips, and truly interviewing is quite the art, and we've learned some fascinating things, and I always only wish I had some of those pieces of information when I was doing my hiring over the many years when I was in the admission office. But as you can see from the current slide on the screen, we are SSATB's Admission Leadership Council. The ALC sponsors a series of spring seminars, regional meetings. So we will be coming hopefully to an area near you. Registration will be opening in the coming weeks, so be sure to share this information with anyone in your school that might be interested, schools in the area, and these meetings are open to both members and non-members of SSATB. And I also wanted to remind everyone that the annual conference for SSATB, the call for proposals is up now, and I encourage you all to consider submitting a proposal. It's always fun to share with colleagues the information that you know that you've learned over the years. And finally, again, a special thanks to our presenters today. I know Ben and Jonathan took time out of their busy schedule during this hiring process, and all of you for tuning in today, so thank you. As a reminder, this is recorded and available for you to reference back when you have time to start your interviewing process and need some tips. So please do that. There is a very brief 3-question survey that will come up when this ends, so I hope you'll share your feedback about the webinar with us, and have a great week and the rest of the season, and thank you all for joining us.